This is Friday, March the 5th, and today in world history we're going to look at China. Now, the Chinese have always been ruled by an emperor for many centuries before the birth of Christ. But in the 18th century, this is all going to change. This is going to change because of something the British are going to do. Now, most opium is harvested in what is today Pakistan, Afghanistan, and India. Now, these are areas that are controlled by the British in the 1800s. The British are going to take this raw this raw material, and they're going to turn it into opium. Now, opium is a highly addictive drug. It is also a hallucinogen. And so they're going to bring it into China, and they're going to get the Chinese hooked on opium. Now, what the British want is they want the emperor to grant them a group of ports and cities, or what the English call a sphere of influence. Now, here is a map of China. Now, the British are going to center most of their studies on Hong Kong. That would be right down here. It is in Hong Kong that there will be opium dens. And the Chinese are going to try to stop these opium dens. They will have to attack the British. This begins what is generally called the First Opium War. Now, the First Opium War will end, and both sides will sign the Treaty of Nanking. Now, in the Treaty of Nanking, not only will China give ports to the British, but China will give ports to what will soon be Germany, France, Russia, a whole host of European countries. Now, this here is a video about the Opium Wars. To combat foreign involvement in China, the Chinese are going to begin to form into secret societies. These societies are going to call for the removal of Europeans. They're also going to call for the removal of the Christian faith. Many Chinese are offended because as the Europeans come to China, they are bringing missionaries. And these missionaries are trying to sway the Chinese from their religions to the Christian faith. Hong Si is going to build a well-trained army near his settlement of Taipei. He is going to call for the land to be redistributed amongst the peasants. Now, Hong Si is going to be angry at both the British because they are trying to take over the land, and the Chinese government because they are not defending the land. By 1856, this is right before our American Civil War, we're going to have the Taiping Rebellion. Now, the Taiping Rebellion is going to bring armies from the Emperor of China and those of the British to try to defeat Hong Si. They will be successful. But European nations will use this rebellion as a chance to get more concessions from the Chinese government. By the end of the 19th century, the leaders of the Chinese royal family have organized a secret society that has the word fist in it. It is because of that Westerners call it the Boxer Rebellion. Now, the Boxer Rebellion was aimed at the foreign legations in the capital of Peking. First, the Christian missionaries were killed, and then the various ambassadors and their staffs were killed. Now, the hope was that all of the Christians would be killed along with all of the Europeans, and then the Europeans would be pushed out of China. Well, in time, the European nations are going to combine their forces, and they're going to drive the Boxers out of Peking. Now, because of this, the Chinese leaders are going to be thrown out. China will be forced to pay huge reparation. Western countries are going to demand that China form into a republic, with the emperor having most of his power taken away. Soon, just before the World War I, we are going to see China become a republic and stay a republic until after World War II. Now, this video here talks about the Boxer Rebellion. On this map, I'd like for you to find the following cities: Hong Kong, Shanghai, and Peking. Now, on your Google Maps, remember that Peking will be spelled B-I-B-E-I-J-I-N-G, Beijing. Next, find the Yangtze River and the Yellow River. Finally, find the island of Formosa, or what is called Taiwan. Now, it is important that you know these locations. You will see them again in the not-so-distant future. We're going to turn our attention now to Japan. Japan had isolated itself from European countries ever since the Dark Ages. Now, the Dutch will be allowed to have a port in Japan, but that is it. In the 1850s, an American battleship commanded by Matthew Perry is going to sail into Yokohama. Now, Yokohama is the port city right outside of Tokyo. The various Japanese leaders are invited to go aboard the ship. They are invited to fire the guns. And they quickly discover that Japan is far behind the rest of the Western world. Soon, the Treaty of Kanagawa is going to be formed. And in this treaty, the Japanese are going to start to buy modern weapons, not only from us, but also from the French and the British. And the French, the British, and the Americans are going to come over and train the Japanese how to fight like a Western army. This here is a video that deals with Matthew Perry and his voyages. Not all Japanese warlords agreed with the modernization of Japan. British and French forces will destroy key Japanese forces. Now, the Japanese agree that the Meiji, that is the royal family, will continue to be the ruling family of Japan. The Meiji emperor is going to call for a charter oath. Now, a charter oath is where all of the various warlords are going to pledge their obedience to the Meiji emperor. Now, by the way, the Meiji emperor still sits on the chrysanthemum throne in Japan today. Now, the oath called for the adoption of Western ways and dress. The oath called for the abolishment of the samurai. Now, a samurai is a warrior who is trained for devotion to his warlord. Many samurais oppose this, and rebellions will take out. Now, the Meiji forces are going to use modern means to defeat the samurais. And soon the samurais are either dead or aligned with the Meiji emperor. The Meiji leaders will establish modern communication. They will call for the creation of a railroad. The Japanese will create a modern army based on the French army and a modern navy based on the British. They will look to expand their power, particularly across the Sea of Japan into what is now China and Korea. Now, with this new army and new navy, the Japanese are going to join European forces in time to defeat the Chinese secret societies in the Boxer Rebellion. With this victory, Japan will take over several Chinese cities and ports. They will call for the development of the part of China called Manchuria. Now, on this map, where is Korea? Where is Manchuria? Where is the Sea of Japan? Where is Mount Fuji, the most sacred mountain in Japan? Now, Tokyo and Yokohama are the same thing. Yokohama is the port that leads directly into Tokyo. And finally, where is Honshu? Honshu is the main island of Japan. Japan has thousands of islands, but 4 of them are large enough to sustain a large population. Honshu is where most of the people live. Now, if you can find Mount Fuji, if you can find Tokyo, if you can find Yokohama, then you have found Honshu. Well, I think this would be a good place for us to stop. Again, I can tell you right off the bat that we're going to have lots of maps next week, so be ready for that. Now, whether we can get a quiz in or not, I don't know.